Welcome to the 18th virtual meeting of the Nassau County REIA. We met in person for about a year, no more, about a year and a half, and then the pandemic hit, and now we are virtual. So that is where we are. Okay, so quick agenda of what's going to happen today. So the first 2 minutes, I'm just going to introduce myself. If you've been here before, you've heard it before. Next 3 minutes, I'm going to talk about what's going on in the real estate market. And in my business, I don't really talk about that so much today. And the next half hour, I would say, is really an overview of how to finance deals. I get asked about this all the time. How do you get money for deals? What are the options to get money for deals? Last 5 minutes will be how I can help you. And then we'll have questions and answers. Any feedback, you can ask anything. It doesn't have to be on any topic we covered today. And until 7 or 7:30. So I'll go until there's no more questions or till 7:30. One of those, whichever one of those happens, that is where we will go. Okay, people are still checking in. Okay, so today's topic is really finance, raising money, getting money, how that works in real estate investing in New York. So first, who I am. So my name is Michael Pinter. I bought my first house in Long Island in 1996. I've been a full-time real estate investor since 2013. I was part-time before that. I had 17 years in the mortgage business before I really got into investing full-time. The first 4 years I was buying at auctions, live auctions, and online auctions. And I was gut renovating every single property. Last 5 years, I have been marketing direct to sellers and either closing by wholesaling, which means I do very little work and put it on the market, or no work and put it on the market. I also do some rehabs, and I do wholesaling. Right? Wholesaling means I go, and we're going to talk more about this, but I go into contract on the property, and then I just assign the contract to another cash buyer. My office is in Hewlett. Everyone is invited to come by and see it. You can see my board with all the deals I'm working on. I said Nassau and Suffolk, but I really do mostly Nassau. I try and do southwestern Suffolk so I don't have to drive so far. But in the end, I keep driving far. So last year was a bad year for me. I did 35 deals with about half of them where I closed and had to wholesale or rehab, and the other half I wholesaled. It was a down year. I think I had almost 50 the year before. 2021 was looking much better for me. It's looking like a really good year. But last year, really, because of the pandemic, I was shut down. March, April, May, June, maybe 5 months of the year was just shot. Okay, so we've been around, I think, 21 months, might be 22 months of the Nassau County REIA. So let me show you what's happened for the people that are members of the REIA. Over 80 members have come to the office. Everyone's invited, so please call, make an appointment. I'm happy to talk to you. A lot of REIA members have brought deals that I co-wholesaled with them, so they didn't know if it was a deal, they needed help with the deal, or they needed financing for the deal, which we'll talk about later today. And we did it together, and we split the profits. Several members have bought wholesale deals from me, so I had a wholesale deal. They wanted to fix and flip, and they bought it from me. And several members have borrowed from me from the flips. I do lending on occasion. So we'll talk about the current real estate market. We've talked about this before. The market is absurdly hot. We are at record highs all over the place, right? I really thought during the pandemic or soon after the pandemic, everything would really take a nosedive. I think we are also like 12 or 13 years into an upcycle, which is really long. So this is going to end at some point, but we don't know when. So there's a lot of buying opportunities right now, especially tired landlords. So I'm getting a lot more landlords who are not getting paid because of the eviction moratorium, and they cannot take it anymore. So I'm buying a lot of occupied properties now. Business has definitely picked up. March was good. Yeah, March was good, and April's looking even better. I really only turned on all my marketing channels in September. It's crazy. It really took about 6 months for me to see the fruits of that. I mean, the buying cycle in New York is so much longer than other places. It's really amazing. So like I'm getting calls now for people that got mail from me in like September, where I mailed them 6 times, and they're saying, I got 6 postcards from you. So I do direct mail. I mail to a list. I do RVM, ringless voicemail. So I drop a voicemail into their phones. I do cold calling, I text them, and I do some pay-per-click. It's not really pay-per-click, it's more pay-per-lead from a service. But it takes a long time for marketing to filter through. So I'm really seeing that like now, last month now, seeing the pipeline really get full. So today's topic is how do you finance your wholesale or your fix and flip deals? So this is a high-level analysis of what you should know about this topic. I want to reiterate this, and I'm going to say this probably 6 times during the presentation. If you're starting out, getting educated and marketing for sellers are the only things you should be doing. That is the crux of the business, not finding money. Money, I'm doing this whole presentation, and it's ironic, right? Because I'm telling you, don't think about this. But I get asked about it all the time, so I'm going to explain to you how it works. But it's not what you should be doing. Again, I'm going to repeat that multiple times. People come in the middle, and we're going to talk a lot about why it's not what you should be doing. So before we start, I've done everything I'm about to explain to you. This is an overview of what I teach, how I do business. You don't have to do anything the way I do. You feel free to take notes at the end. You can let me know if there's some topic you want me to cover on a future meeting. I am running out of things to talk about just in my head, even though I know that somebody that's joining this may not have heard last month. So feel free, if you think of a major topic or something I can talk about for a half hour, I'm happy to listen to it. So I'm going to repeat this again, right? I see two consistent excuses for people that they tell me all the time of why they haven't started. So somebody will come to my office and they'll go, I've been a wholesaler for 3 years. And then when I really get down to it, they haven't done one deal. And what I hear all the time is that they are trying to line up their money. I'm trying to get financing. I'm trying to get a private lender. And I hear that they're trying to build a buyer's list. These are not reasons. Let me take a step back. You should not be doing any of those things in the beginning. Okay? They're not valid reasons. These are not valid reasons not to start marketing for sellers. I think that's right. Money and buyers will always find good deals. Always. So I hear the same bullshit story all the time. Oh, I had a deal 2 years ago, but I couldn't get financing for it. Guess what? It probably wasn't a good deal. Or you didn't really know where to look to get financing. Because if it's a good deal, there's a billion people who want to give you money for it. Or I had a great deal, but I couldn't find a buyer. You know, if you told me that in 1985, I believe it, right? But now with the internet, it's just impossible. It's just so easy to find the buyers out there. I got to tell you, I don't have the biggest buyers list. I recently trimmed my buyers list from like 1,100 to around 600 because I had 500 duds there. And I can sell a wholesale deal in a day with no problem. And I'm getting numbers that are ridiculous. So if you have a good deal, that's the whole business. The whole business is getting deals and talking to sellers. And obviously, no one wants to do that, right? Because that's the hard part. You talk to a sellers are going to tell you to go screw yourself. Sellers are going to tell you they want $900,000 for a house you can pay $300,000 for. That's the hard part. And I'm going to tell you that do not spend a second building a buyer's list or 1 second dealing with money. And I know this whole presentation is going to be about money, but just get the deal. Once you get the deal, I'm going to give you basics so that you understand how the money works. But trust me, there's never going to be a problem finding money or a buyer for a good deal. And again, we're going to repeat this again. So let's talk about what I did, right? So I started buying. I wanted to be Tarek El Moussa from Flip or Flop. That was my dream. I actually got him on the phone. I spoke to him, and I watched HGTV. And when I started buying and gut renovating every house I bought, right? I used to think that wholesalers were these knuckle-dragging Neanderthals, right? These cavemen who just milled themselves into a deal. And the rehabbers were the guy that were really unlocking the value. So a few deals changed my mind on that. I bought a deal from a guy who made $180,000 wholesaling it to me. I did all the work, fixed it up, and I think I made 60 grand. Now, I'm happy making 60 grand. But this whole concept that the wholesaler is this Neanderthal over the years has changed. So what happened to me is that after 4 years of going to every single Tuesday to the Nassau County auction and spending endless amounts of time on online websites like Hubzu and Zome and auction.com and every other one, Hudson and Marshall, I realized I couldn't control how many deals I bought, right? Because I'll just give you a basics of how it works at the weekly auction. You go to the weekly auction, so you pay. There's two services like either Property Shark or LI Profiles will give you a list on Thursday of everything that's scheduled to come to auction on Tuesday. That's a list that can be several hundred lines long. And when you show up on Tuesday, 75% of those properties are not there anymore, right? They fall off for all kinds of reasons. The guy could have paid off the loan, right? The guy could have declared bankruptcy. There could be a paperwork issue. There's a million reasons why things get adjourned. Some of them just fall out of foreclosure. And so you could spend the whole Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday on that list, and then 75% of what you're doing is a waste of time. I would only do it on Sunday. So I would spend time in the morning on Monday. I'd spend time in the morning Monday calling every single plaintiff's attorney to see if the property was still scheduled to go. And then you get there and the property, let's say, makes it through this gauntlet of deals that get adjourned. there's an upset price. So the bank, the plaintiff, the lender has an upset price. They have a minimum price. Now, if my max price for a deal is $200,000, the upset price could be $1 million. So that's a huge waste of time. And then even if the upset price comes in below your price, someone else can outbid you. Like if my max price is 200, someone else can pay 250. So for me, it was an exercise in futility. I was spending my entire Monday and Tuesday on it, which is 40% of my week, and I couldn't control how many deals I got. And as I moved on through the time, I bought a lot of deals, but I couldn't control them. I wanted to scale my business, so I started going direct to sellers. And what I realized is that when you market direct to sellers, you can buy it cheap enough that there's a spread between what you got it for from the seller and what another buyer, what a cash buyer will pay. So back to financing. So I maxed out on my hard money on every deal, right? I got a hard money loan on it, which we're going to talk in depth about what hard money is and how it works. And I had equity partners for the rest of it. And I'm going to go in depth of what I did and why you probably don't want to do that, right? I don't recommend this for you, right? Just to tell you what I did on my first deal, I paid 16% interest and 6 points on my deal. And then I had an equity partner to cover the gap, and I had to split the profit 50-50. Now, I made money on that deal, and it got me into the business, so I'm happy. You do whatever you need to do to get deals closed. But I did that really for 4 years, and we'll talk more about that why. And it may not be the best way to do it, and we'll go through other options. So basically, there's two types of deals, right? There's buying a house to fix and flip, or buying a house to even fix and wholesale, but that means you're going to close on it. And then there's just wholesaling, which is getting a house under contract to wholesale to another buyer. Those are two different categories. And when it comes to financing, there's a big difference. What's the difference? Wholesaling is only going to require you to put up the earnest money deposit, the EMD. I didn't really get into the nitty gritty of how much a deposit is, but standard deposits in New York, and I believe we're the only state out of 50. There's so many things different in New York than all other 49 states. Standard New York is 10%. You talk to somebody, even in California. I got someone who sent me a deal in California today. I'm trying to market in one little area of California, and the guy said they were asking $900,000 for a house. He asked me for a $20,000 deposit, and he was like scared asking me for $20,000 deposit. I put in a much lower offer. I'm probably not going to buy the house, but standard deposits, EMDs in other states are like $1,000, $2,000. You buy $1 million house with $500. That's not how it works in New York. So I didn't really get into deposits. I probably should have, but it's a negotiation. So if you're going to go to a seller and tell them and bring, like if you're watching some of the other gurus from the other states, and you're going to slide a check for $100 across the table, you're not going to buy the house. It's just never going to work. As unsophisticated as a seller is, his attorney is never going to draw up a contract with a ridiculously small EMD. So I usually negotiate it. I'll give 10 grand, I'll give 15 grand. It really depends on the purchase price. Sometimes I'll give more. And if it's a really good deal and the guy's insisting on 10%, I'll give it. I just don't like it. But that's the only part of the deal that you have to finance, right? If you're going to close, fix, flip a house, you're going to need a lot more money. We're going to get into that soon. But understand, the money, even the money for the EMD doesn't have to come from you, right? You can get an equity partner, and then you give them a split of the profits if you want to borrow just the EMD. And we're going to talk about that more. So the easiest way to get the money for the EMD when you start is to joint venture, to JV, with someone who has the money and can help you. So this is a shameless plug for myself, but I have I looked at my board. I have 6 JV deals in the pipeline right now. I closed on 5 others in the last 2 months. So I am there for you. So if you find a deal and you don't know what to do with it, I'm happy to, first of all, help you determine if it's a deal. And second of all, happy to partner with you on the deal so you don't have to put up the money, right? If you find a good deal, you bring it to me or anyone else. There's only, as crazy as it sounds, there's only 4 or 5 other guys who are marketing direct to seller in the entire Long Island, which is nuts because it's almost 3 million people. And I have a standard JV split. We sign an agreement for each deal, so there's no overarching agreement. It's just one deal. It's basically if we wholesale it, it's 50-50 split. And if I have to close on it and use my money, then it's 60-40 in my favor. That's the basic split. It's pretty simple. And if anybody wants to talk to any of my students who have done deals with me, I'm happy to put you in touch with them. So if you don't want a JV with another investor like me, you can use your own cash. Obviously, you can write a check, or you can borrow the deposit from somebody you know, right? You're talking about usually 30, 40 grand. But here's the things you can't do, and I get asked this all the time. You cannot get a hard money loan for the deposit. You can't go to a traditional lender and borrow the deposit. You can't even go to a transactional funder and get a deposit. So just explain what a transactional funder is. Transactional funder is somebody who's going to fund the closing of your deal on a double close situation. So we're going to get off topic again. Just explain what a double close is and why you really don't want to do it in New York unless it's necessary. So I just explained what an assignment was. I go into contract with a seller, and then I assign the contract. I never close. In other parts of the country, they like to double close, which means they'll close on the deal, they'll close on the buy, and an hour later they'll close on the sale. So the reason why it works better in other parts of the country than New York, there's several reasons. The first is it's very easy to get out of contract in other parts of the country. In New York, when a seller signs a contract with you, he's not getting out. And his attorney is going to tell him he has no way out, right? You can sue him not just for your deposit back, but you can sue him for the entire specific performance, which means the entire purchase price. And any attorney knows that. So in other parts of the country, they like to double close because they are concerned that the seller will see how much money you're making. Just a quick story. I've told it a bunch of times. One of my best wholesale deals when I first started was a guy in Great Neck, a two-family in Great Neck, and the guy was a very militant guy who was constantly complaining about getting screwed over. I found the buyer for $120,000 more than my price. So this is right when I started wholesaling, and I was concerned. So I talked to my attorney. I'm like, should I double close on it? Because I think this guy's going to get upset. And he said to me words that I will never forget, and they are ingrained in my brain. He goes, the guy might be upset, but he's not selling the house to anybody else. And we closed on it. I don't go to closing, so I don't know if he was upset or not. I really don't care. But the point is, you can't get out. So in other parts of the country, I like to double close. And also in other parts of the country, closing costs are a few $100s. Here, closing costs can be $8,000 to $10,000. So if you have a $30,000 wholesale deal, which is typical for me, I'm certainly not going to give away $8,000 of it so that to save somebody's feelings. So so there's no double closing here. So that's what a transactional funder is. But a transactional funder is never, ever, nobody, no traditional lender, no institutional lender is going to lend you money for a deposit. It's just impossible. I probably get asked that once or twice a week. How do I borrow the money for the deposit? You can't. You can't. That's it. I mean, you could borrow from your friend, but you need the cash or you need a private loan. So I'm going off topic again, right? Additional benefit of teaming up. So what a lot of people don't tell you in the gurus that are out there is that they create this concept of wholesaling that you're going to buy a list, right? You're going to call or market to that list somehow, and a vast majority of people are going to have the right numbers, which is not true. And a vast majority of people with the right numbers are going to have a house to sell you, which is not true. And then a vast majority of those people are just going to want to sell desperately, right? For any price. I need to sell this in an hour. The truth is that when you start marketing, most of the numbers are wrong, no matter where you get the list from or skiptrace it. Most of the people there don't want to sell. Most people who do want to sell don't want to sell to an investor. Most people who do want to sell to an investor are not going to sell to you. But most importantly is these are not people who just want to sell in 15 minutes, right? So I can smell newbie wholesale or wannabe when I hear things like, I can close in 24 hours all cash. It's just a stupid thing to say. In my experience, I have bought significantly more houses from people that wanted a slow close, so they just didn't know where they were going and they wanted to know that it was under contract, than I bought from people that want to close quickly. I have bought houses from people that want to close quickly, but it's not as common. Right? The smartest thing to say is I'll close whenever you want. So the truth is most sellers are going to give you an idea of the price. Well, if you do it right, they're going to give you an idea of the price, or they're going to at least have a price in their mind. And you are not going to know if it's a deal or not. So, I like Tom Kroll a lot. He actually comes from Long Beach, right? He used to be with Wholesaling Inc. And he goes, I don't know anything about ARV. I don't know anything about real estate. I just know I get it at a discount. But the truth is, he operated in Port St. Lucie, where it's a very, very homogenous property type. Everything there was built, after 1960. And you basically know that if you can buy something for less than $80,000, you're going to make money on it. In our areas, we have a very, very diverse inventory. We have houses that are built in before 1900. I bought houses that were built in the 1800s. And you have recent houses and older houses, and it's very hard to know what a deal is. So one of the advantages of teaming up with somebody like me, I guess I'm continuing my shameless plug for me, is that I'm going to let you know what a deal is, right? So people call me all the time and say, I have this deal. I'll go on an appointment with them if they want, and I'll tell them this is a deal if you can buy it for under $440,000, for example. I'm going into contract tomorrow on a deal in Greenvale where I'm getting it pretty cheap. I'm getting it for 420, and I think it was a deal even at 450. But that was the number, and the person negotiated it, and we're gonna split it, and I think we're gonna wholesale do very well. So when you JV with a seasoned investor, they're gonna let you know what a deal is and what isn't, and it's not easy to know, right? It's not. When you start, it's on some level terrifying because you have no outs in your contract. The gurus will tell you can have an inspection contingency. It's not how it works in New York. In New York, the inspections get done before the contract signed, not after. So every single contract that I go into, and I go into a ton of contracts, I have to either assign the contract or I have to close. I have no outs ever, unless there's a title issue, which is very rare. Okay, so now let's talk about the more complicated part of financing, which is money to actually close and fix and flip a house. You're going to need some money for it, right? So you're going to need somewhere between 10 and 30% of the purchase price. You're going to need closing costs on the purchase, which are significant. You're going to need monthly payments for the length of the loan, and you're going to need some money to get the contractor started. So everything we're going to say really assumes you take a hard money loan and you borrow somewhere between 70 and 90% of purchase price and all the renovation costs. So that gap, right, which could easily be $100,000, doesn't have to be yours. Okay, so after my first deal, I ran out of money. So I went to private investors to fund this gap, right? And I gave the investors a share of the profits. This hurt. All right, we're going to talk about this a few times. This really hurt when I sold, right? Because when I sold the property, at that time, I think I was buying capes for like $270 that were going to sell for $400, and I was putting $40,000 into them, $50,000 in them. But I had it took a while, right? And I had huge hard money bills at the end, and then we got profits, and I had to split those profits. So a better thing to do is really give that gap lender a preset rate of return on their investment, or make it a loan, make it a second lien if the hard money loan is in first position. That would have been better because the splitting the profits hurt. So I remember I was doing a lot of these capes in Elmont and Valley Stream, and like the profits should have been between 40 and 60 grand, but I was giving up half of that to the investor. Now I was making money, and I was making more money, and I know I sound like a whiny bitch to complain about it, but I'm just saying if you have a way to not do that, it's better. Okay, so let's talk about hard money, right? There are hundreds of hard money lenders out there, right? Some are huge institutions like Lending One or Lending Home, and some are just single person operations, just some guy who's got a few $1 million that he likes to lend. The basic premise of hard money lending is to lend a rehabber the money to buy a property at a discount, fix it up, and sell it for a profit. That's the basic premise, right? Hard money lenders always charge higher rates of interest than a traditional lender. Like the rates today, if you go to a Chase, are 3%. You're not going to get 3% from a hard money lender, right? And they usually charge one or several points. A point is 1% of the loan amount. So if they're lending you $300,000, each point is $3,000. And I'd say typical for hard money is to pay 2 points. So hard money lenders may not lend to you if you can't show a track record, if it's your first deal, or if your credit score is poor. Many years ago, not even that many years ago, hard money lenders were really considered asset-based lenders. They couldn't give two shits about you. All they cared about was that they were getting a property, and I'm talking about pre-2008. No, but a lot of these lenders showed up after 2008. So even as recently as 5 or 6 years ago, they didn't care. They didn't even run your credit. But many of them today want to know if you've done deals, and they want to know that your credit's good. Now, there are some lenders that don't care about either of those, right? There's one called RD Advisors, if anybody wants that. To know that, there's a guy, Steven Moskowitz, he's a good dude, and they really don't care. They are, it's funny, they're based in New York. They've only lent until a year ago in Boston, but they really want to move into the island, and they said if the deal's good, they'll do it. I've had good feedback from people who went to them. So that's an iffy thing, right? Some lenders are going to run your credit and check your track record, some are not. But no hard money lender is going to lend to you if the deal doesn't make sense to them, right? So I get people telling me all the time, I got this deal, I'm buying it for $400,000, put $50,000 into it and sell it for $500,000. No hard money lender is going to lend you on that because that is a deal that you are going to lose your ass on. Because after you figure in all your closing costs on the buy, closing costs on the sale, interest costs to them, and I'm sure cost overruns on your construction, you're going to lose your ass. And they will not lend to you if they think you're not going to make money. They'll even come to you and say, it looks like you're making $25,000 profit. This looks like too thin of a deal. So you got to understand, they only want to lend to you if you're going to make money. It would seem stupid, right? They would think they would only want to lend if they get their money back. They only want to lend if the deal makes good sense. They also are not going to lend to you if you don't have a real plan to exit and pay them back. So I get people telling me all the time, I'm going to buy this rental and I'm going to get a hard money loan on it. Guess what? Hard money lenders want to be paid back. So if you have a plan to refinance, they want to know you're either going to refinance out of them or you're going to sell it. And they want to know that that's going to happen in a relatively short period of time, right? And they won't lend to you if there's a title clearance problem. You probably can't buy it if there's a title clearance problem. I don't know why I put that there. So hard money lenders are really a good resource to you, right? If you're starting out and you don't know if a deal is good, you could show it to a couple of hard money lenders. If 2 hard money lenders tell you there's not enough room in this deal, it's probably not a good deal. I can tell you, I lost money, I think, on 3 deals in my life, and one of them, a lender said no to it. And in the end, we did it, and I probably should have agreed to it. And the truth is, I could have made money on the deal, but I should have walked away. I screwed up on the deal and made mistakes, but they're a good resource, right? They don't want to lend to you unless it's a deal that makes sense. So they want you to make money and then borrow from them again. Most hard money loan terms are for 12 months, right? They want to get paid back in a year. Some will go 18 months, some will give you 6 months with a 6-month extension. And most lenders will let you extend beyond that, right? If you seem that you know what you're doing, right? If you're doing work and you're just waiting for a C of O or an approval, or you're trying to find a buyer, they'll usually extend, but they'll usually charge a fee for that extension. Hard money lenders want to get paid back as quickly as possible. So I hear things like this all the time. I'll get a hard money loan for 7 years. The guy is making 10, 12%. He's going to want to make money forever. No hard money lender wants to be in a project for a long period of time. It's just not how they work. A lot of them make their money on the points, and they borrow their capital. So they just want, and they need it's short-term capital. So they need to turn their money, right? Some have interest minimums. They want to get a minimum of 3 months. Many do not. Many don't care if you pay them back in 2 minutes. The typical rates are between 8 and 14%, and between 1 and 3 points. Hard money costs have gone down considerably over the last 2 or 3 years. It's not on. I have a line of credit with Lending Home for like 8% that I can use. So again, I got reamed on my first deal. I used a broker. He charged 3 points, I think. Then the lender charged 3 points. I would not use a hard money broker unless you need one. You can literally go on the internet and find a lender. If you need help finding a lender, I'm happy to help you. I also lend if it's not your first deal, that kind of thing. Most hard money loans are for between 80 and 90% of the purchase price plus 100% of the construction costs. So they're going to lend you. They want you to put some money into it, but they don't mind funding the construction, right? But what they're going to want is a detailed scope of work, which is a description of all the work that's going to be done and the order it's going to be done. And the lenders will pay your construction in arrears. So a typical example is I would do 5 draws. The first draw is when all demolition is done. Second draw is done when the second draw comes when the kitchen cabinets are installed. The third draw is when all the bathrooms are tiled. The fourth draw is when all the fixtures are installed. And the fifth draw is the completion. That's just an example. So they're going to pay your construction in arrears. You're going to need money to give to the contractor to start. And you got to make sure he goes in the order you told the lender. Because most contractors are morons and they're going to do things as it's convenient for them. And that really screws things up. Sometimes you go back to the lender and you go, hey, I know I told you that this would be done last. This was done first. And then you don't get paid. And then everything becomes a pain in the ass. So these things are called draws. So typical is 3 to 5 draws. And then you're going to tell them exactly what work is being done. And then when it's done, they're going to send an inspector out. Sometimes if it's minor or simple, they'll say just take pictures and send it to them. But they'll do at least one or two inspections, and then they'll wire you the money. So you got to understand, hard money mortgages, or really any mortgages in New York, come with a tremendous amount of costs, right? It's not unusual for closing costs, even if there's no loan, to be $10,000 or more. You've got to understand, in Nassau County, the recording charges for a document, they charge per page. So a standard mortgage, like 25 pages, like $800 to record the mortgage. And when you sell it, it's $800 to record the satisfaction. It's ridiculous. Our costs for title, for legal representation, I mean, it's not unreasonable for your attorney to charge you $3,000. It's a lot. All these things add up. And then what any loan you take increases the cost because there's mortgage tax in New York. So even out of the city, it's 1%. So if I take a loan of $300,000, it's $3,000 in mortgage tax, and additional recording fees also. Some lenders even require a UCC, which I hate, which is something that they do for co-ops. It's a stupid thing, and the recording costs are ridiculous. So almost every single hard money lender is going to require you to make monthly interest-only payments. Hard money lenders want to get paid off and just turn the money as often as possible. That's hard money. Anybody have any questions on hard money? Anything in the chat? I see not one question in the chat. If you want, I'll keep going. Oh, Juan, you can unmute and ask questions. Sure.
Quick question. Thanks, Mike. How do you keep contractors in check to adhere to the draws that you set up with the hard money lenders?
I would give them the scope of work, and I would say if you, I'm only paying you X when this is done. If you want to do Y, that's fine. I'm just not paying you. Everything with contractors is getting paid. So
fair enough.
I'd say you must do the kitchen first. If you do the bathrooms first, I'm not paying you. So if I had a 50, in the example I gave before, if I had $50,000 contractor bill, I would say I'm giving you $10,000 when the demolition is done, $10,000 when this is done. Say if you want to go out of order, that's fine, but I'm not paying you for that. That's the only way to keep a contractor in check.
Got it. Cool. Thank you.
So private money lenders, right? We hear a lot about this on the internet. So there's really no rules when it comes to borrowing from a private money lender. But typically, a private money lender wants a strong rate of return. They usually want double digits. I have lenders who I just borrowed some at 9%, but they usually want more, and they want to be protected in case you default. So they want to have an attorney represent them, and they want an attorney prepare their loan docs, and they want to make sure their mortgage is recorded at closing. And also, they want to be communicated with during the rehab process. So the idea that I'm just going to borrow this money and never talk to the guy is a mistake. There's literally millions of people who have money and want a better, more secure return on their money than they're getting right now. Even if they're doing well in the stock market, everybody knows that they're one geopolitical event away from their portfolio getting cut in half. So there's something called self-directed retirement accounts that, for some reason, most people don't know about. So any retirement account, I'm talking about any IRA, including a Roth, any 401k, including a SEP, any of those, can become a self-directed account that can buy real estate or lend for real estate. So there are companies that do that. There's one that I use, a Specialized Trust, and it's a simple, inexpensive procedure. It costs like $500 or $600, and you take somebody's IRA or his 401k. It's got a couple $100,000 in it. It's in the stock market, and you make it self-directed. And and real estate is considered security, and it's completely legal for it to either buy a property or to lend to an entity that buys a property. So there's tons of people who want to get involved in real estate, right? They watch HGTV like I used to. They have money, but they have no idea how to do it. By allowing them to invest in a flip, you're really doing them a favor, right? They're happy to do it. They want to come. You can show them as you do the work. They're always thrilled. If you want to find these people, then you have to market for them, right? Just like you got to market for sellers to find deals, you got to market for private money. So you got to tell a lot of people what you do, and you got to mention that you help people make money. And you'd be surprised how many times you're going to do that. You're going to find people who are interested in investing. The real smart way to do it is never to ask anybody for money. It's to ask anybody you think who has money if they know anyone who might be interested in investing. And then that's a much less threatening question. And if they want to, then they'll step up and they'll say, well, how about me? That's happened a bunch of times. So it's a very good tactic. Never ask somebody, hey, do you want to invest in me? Just say, hey, do you know anybody who might want double-digit returns secured by real estate? Okay, so ideally, the private money lender will fund the entire deal in return for a strong rate of return and a mortgage securing their investment. So that's ideal. That's the best. There's one mortgage on it. There's one person to deal with when you close. That's the best situation. Unfortunately, in our area, this could be a lot of money, right? It's very typical for a deal to be $300,000-$400,000, right? If you include all the construction costs. So it's easier in other parts of the country where you're buying something for $75,000 and putting $25,000 into it, right? A lot of people have $100,000 in their 401k. They may not have $500,000 in 401k. But most private money lenders will take their interest when the property gets sold. You don't have to make monthly payments. Very few of them are even going to ask for monthly payments. They're going to understand that if I'm giving you a 10% rate of return and you give me $300,000 and I keep it for a year, I'm going to return to you $330,000, right? Whatever rate of return you give them is on an annualized basis. But most of them don't want to take payments and keep track of it. They're not servicers. They don't know what they wouldn't know what to do with the payment. They wouldn't know how to figure out what the rate of return is. So it's easier for everyone if they get paid one time their interest at the end. Okay. So again, my story. I had hard money lenders the bulk of my projects. The private money lenders for the gap. I gave them a percentage of profit instead of interest. It resulted in much lower profits for me because I had to pay 2 people at every closing. Right. It did allow me to grow the business every year, make more money every year. If it's your only option, take it. And I'm repeating this thing that I said before. So some people just can't. I constantly get asked about financing, and I constantly hear people tell me they're not starting the business because I don't have money. I hear that 10 times a month. But this is not what you should be focusing on when you start. You should be getting educated to figure out how things work and getting discounted deals under contract. Those are the only things you should be doing. If you're spending 1 ounce of time or effort on a buyer's list or on getting your financing in order, you're wasting your time. Okay, so let's talk about traditional financing options, right? I was 17 years in the mortgage business. One thing I know is mortgages. So assuming that you're buying a property that's in decent livable condition, that your credit's good, that you show adequate income, and you can show enough cash for the down payment, you can get a traditional Fannie Freddie loan from any lender, Chase, Bank of America, Wells, anybody. You'll probably need about 20% to put down, though, because it's an investment property. Now, can you claim that this is going to be your primary residence if you rent? Sure. And is anybody going to ask you a question? No. But you only can get away with that so many times before somebody realizes you're full of crap. So if you claim it's your primary residence, you can probably put as little as 5% down. So there is an FHA situation where you put only 3.5% down. But I would highly recommend that you do not claim a property that you don't intend to live in and get an FHA loan on it, right? FHA, just explain what the FHA is. FHA is just an insurance company. FHA doesn't make loans. Federal Housing Authority, the loan gets made by whatever institution you borrow from, Chase, Wells, Bank of America. But FHA insures it, and FHA only lends on primary residences. That's it. I was in the mortgage business through the crash, right? So I was in the mortgage business from 1997 till 2013. The only people I ever saw go to jail were people who screw around with FHA loans. So I would not recommend doing that. Okay, like you can't have 2 FHA loans. You can't. So don't get FHA financing if you're not planning to live in there. Now there's still going to be a ton of closing costs, and if you plan to refinance the property, so people tell me all the time, well, I'll get a loan now, I'll fix it up, or I'll rent it and then I'll just refinance it. Just understand, you're going to have to pay closing costs twice. Closing costs are significant, right? Not unheard of for $10,000 in closing costs on a refinance. So just understand that and figure that in if you're refinancing. So people ask me all the time about financing rentals, right? I want to buy a long-term property. How do I find? So you have several options, right? If the properties are really in bad shape, you're going to need a hard money lender. But now a lot of hard money lenders offer longer-term rental loans at pretty good rates, like between 5 and 8%. Some of them will let you borrow that when you buy it. Some of them will want you to borrow under their regular fix and flip terms, and then they'll convert it. Some will make you refinance it. Every lender is different. But if it's in good shape, you can get traditional financing like we mentioned earlier. You can, if it's a rental. Like the loans we mentioned are going to be long-term loans. Let's talk about seller financing. This topic comes up a lot. So in the event you have a seller who's allowing you to pay them over time, and they're going to be the bank, right, and finance a sale. So, for example, and you most of the time you're going to have to talk to the seller about this. They're not going to come up with it. But I've had people who offered it to me. I'll take terms. I'll hold paper. They'll say it usually means they're going to be the lender. It's something you should always consider, right? And you have to look at what the payment they want and whether you can get rent for that property that's going to more than cover it, right? You have to figure in a lot of other costs, though. Don't be stupid. Don't forget taxes, insurance, maintenance, utilities that you may have to pay. But if the numbers really work, it's a home run deal. Now, many investors in other parts of the country do seller financing out. They are the bank, right? I know a guy who has like 600 houses in Texas that he did that to. They'll finance a sale to the buyer. But you should never be the bank in New York, right? Foreclosures in New York can take 15 years. If anybody wants to go, as soon as they open up in Nassau County and wants to show up in Mineola for the next auction, I guarantee you will hear dates being said when the judgment for foreclosure went through that are 15 years ago. It can take 15 years. So you never want to be the bank in New York, right? It's good in Texas. Texas, it's like 37 days you foreclose on a house. Guy misses a payment, sheriff comes with a gun, kicks him out, no problem. Rent it and sell it to somebody else. But New York is the opposite of that. I think we're the worst state. I think we're worse than California. So never be the bank in New York. But if the seller will finance to you, it's always something you should consider. 6:42, not bad. Okay, timing's good. So just a conclusion, just a recap, right? So wholesaling really only requires the earnest money deposit. This can't be borrowed from a lender, but can be borrowed privately. Fixing and flipping requires a lot of money. Hard money lenders will lend you most of the project costs, and private money lenders may lend you all the project costs. All loans come with a lot of closing costs, and never be the bank in New York. So I have a course if anybody's interested. It's called howtoflipnewyork.com/course. I think I'm charging $947 for it. I cannot believe I didn't change this. I haven't changed this in 2 months from February. But if you put in this coupon, REIA 10 off, you get 10% off the price. But I really should put that if you sign up in April. I don't know. I haven't changed the coupon yet. It's the coupon code ends. It does not end at the end of the month. That's a lie. So you still get 10% off if you want. It's 9 modules. I don't go through all the modules anymore. I just launched a coaching program. I got a few students. So go to coaching.howtoflipnewyork.com for more information about my coaching if you want to take a look. So we're going to have an in-person meeting. It's 2 weeks from tonight. We're going to go to Cold Spring Harbor. It's a bit of a schlep to the North Shore. 57 Wilton Road. It's a half hour. It's quick. It's a gutted house. It's a monster house. It's huge, on a huge 2-acre property. And it's an interesting story. I'm going to put that into the meetup if anybody's interested in coming. It's definitely interesting. The place is interesting and the story is interesting. And our next virtual meeting will be May 13th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. I'm going to put both of those in the meetup right after this is over. So here are some free resources. I finally got the name right. I have a YouTube channel. I post 5 times a week on my YouTube channel. It's called Flipping and Wholesaling in New York. There's lots of free content. You can please subscribe. You can like my Facebook page, which is called Real Property Buyers. That's the name of my company. You get updates on what I'm working on. So anytime I'm selling something or buying something, it's in there. I'm part of a mastermind with a guy named John Martinez. He is, I think, the premier sales trainer for real estate investors. His website is midwestrev.com. He gives away a tremendous amount of stuff for free. And then in that mastermind is also Mike Hambright, who has a Flip Nerd podcast. I think he's got 1,600 episodes. He's been going live for over 5 years. There's a lot of good information in there. A lot of it does not apply to New York, but it's very interesting if you want that. If you haven't signed up for this meetup group, I doubt that you haven't, but go to meetup.com/Nassau-County-REIA to get updates about future meetings. Okay. So now it is Q&A time. So everybody feel free to either put something in the chat or unmute yourself one at a time and ask. And I'll be here for 45 minutes if the questions keep coming. Otherwise, I'm happy to end early. But I'm looking at the chat. Anybody who feels like they have anything to ask can ask anytime.
I do have a question, Mike.
Sure.
So, besides PropStream, what is the best way to look for sellers when you're starting?
I don't know. It's a too general question. What do you mean?
So, when what is let's say you are specialized in Long Island, Nassau, right? But let's say do you let's say if we get a deal in some other towns, let's say in Westchester or in upstate or somewhere.
Well, if you're a licensed realtor, and I think everybody who's doing this should be a licensed realtor. Right now, we have access to everything up in Westchester. So if you're out of the current MLS area, then you should use PropStream. If you want to look at deals in a bunch of places, then you should definitely use PropStream. PropStream is very good. PropStream is better in north of Manhattan than it is in our area, and it's pretty good in our area. So I don't know any other way to really comp a property. I would never comp a property in any way other than using the MLS data or PropStream. You cannot use Zillow. You cannot use Trulia. You cannot use any free resource because they do not take into account a lot of things, right? And they have an algorithm that works in a lot of parts of the country. I know people that use them in Texas and Arizona, and they're spot on, right? But in our area, let me give you an example. I just did a property. I was about to buy a property in East Hampton. and Zillow said it was worth like $2 million. A lot of $2 million houses in East Hampton, but it was in this little part of East Hampton. It wasn't even worth $1 million. That's $1 million screw up that you can do if you use Zillow. So I would say only use the MLS to comp or PropStream. PropStream is good. That's my answer. All right.
Sure. Thank you.
We got Ray Thomas wants me to put the slide back up with my YouTube channel. Sure. There it is. Okay, Dan Hertler. If I find a deal through direct marketing that I plan to wholesale and I want to get it under contract, do I bring the seller a contract of my own to sign, or do I have my lawyer bring the seller's lawyer a contract? Dan, you're 0 for 2, because both those things are not how it works in New York. Not only do you not bring a contract, but your attorney doesn't bring a contract. In New York, on any real estate transaction, the seller's attorney prepares the contract. So if you guys come here, you'll see my biggest status that I have for properties right now is offer accepted. So sellers accepted my offer, but I haven't gone into contract yet. That can take 2 weeks. So the way it works is after a seller accepts your offer, you trade attorney information and you just stay on top of them to make sure that their attorney sends a contract to your attorney. Once that attorney goes to your attorney, then your attorney is going to negotiate with the seller's attorney about it being assignable, about how much the EMD is going to be, the deposit. But unlike every other state in the country where a real estate transaction takes place between a buyer and a seller, in New York, this transaction takes place between the seller's attorney and the buyer's attorney.
Thanks, Mike. One quick follow-up, sorry.
Sure.
So what if the seller doesn't have an attorney? Do I suggest my own?
So here's the truth. The truth is 99 out of 100 sellers have an attorney, right? First of all, they probably use an attorney when they bought the property, or they at least know an attorney. For that 1 out of 100, then I suggest an attorney to them. I've closed several deals where there was no seller's attorney, and I always dreamed that would be like utopia, and it was a nightmare. Because in the transaction, there are certain responsibilities that a seller's attorney has in New York. One of the big responsibilities that a seller attorney has is to clear all title issues. So if somebody's dead, seller's attorney is going to find the death certificate. If how the checks get distributed at the closing to the seller is something the seller's attorney takes care of. So in my few situations where the seller just refused to get an attorney, besides having them sign a very strongly worded affidavit that said that they are refusing to be represented, it was a nightmare for me because all the crap that the seller's attorney usually does, I ended up doing. So, but I would say honestly, it's 1 out of 100, if not even fewer, that don't have an attorney. It's very uncommon. I have recommended attorneys to sellers on probably 7 or 8 times, but I've done a lot of deals. It's very rare that they don't have an attorney, and it's not something you need to worry about.
In my head, it kind of just feels like if someone's so ready to be done with a house and they just want to get rid of it, like they're gonna say, "Oh, I'm not gonna deal with a lawyer. You deal with all that." Like that's kind of how
it's very uncommon.
It sounds in my head.
It's very uncommon because most of the time they bought the property and they had an attorney represent them on the purchase, so they're familiar with it. It's very uncommon. Can it be that they just moved from another state that doesn't use attorneys and they think it's crazy? Yeah. Can you close if they don't have an attorney? Yeah. But it's very uncommon in New York. Very.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, I got nothing in the chat, and I got no questions. I'll go another few minutes, but if nobody's asking anything, I'm gonna gotta repost the coaching site. Alan says. Here it's coaching.howtoflipnewyork.com. Again, any questions? Feel free.
Are you covering the closing costs of the seller? I know a lot of buyers like to say, like, "Oh, I'll cover your closing costs."
Sure. So, I send a lot of postcards, and some I don't really read them. Some of them say, "I'll cover your closing costs," and then it comes back to me and they say, "Please, you said you're going to cover our closing costs." So, here's what I explain to the seller. I say, well, I'm not covering your attorney because that's something you're gonna negotiate between you and them. That your attorney might charge you $10,000. I don't know what he's charging you. But I will cover your transfer tax. Now, understand, they don't know how much that is, but transfer tax in New York is only $4 per thousand. So if I'm buying something for even $400,000, it's $1,600. So I'll eat that. I have had situations where they told me you need to eat my attorney also, and I said, okay, I'll cover up to $1,500. It really depends on the deal. I'm usually not going to let a deal slide for a couple $1,000. So if they hold me to it, I'll do it. if it comes up, I'll do what I can. But it's not as big a deal as you think it is. Like I said, the mentality in New York is not this, I got to get rid of this property and all I care about is I don't want to pay a realtor or an attorney. It's just different. Things move slower here. And I'd say it comes up with me maybe 1 out of 10 times. And it really depends on what the postcard says. Sometimes the postcard says I'll cover your closing costs, and then they whip that out, and then I'll have to do it. But it's infrequent. It doesn't happen that often. David T says, you mentioned you're buying from tired landlords who have tired tenants and not paying rent. Are you buying it with the non-paying tenants while waiting on the eviction moratorium ends? Is the game plan to wait for them to get evicted, fix it and sell it, or are you assigning it? So it's funny you say that. So if you would have asked me 6 months ago, I would have said you can't wholesale a deal that's got tenants. I got to be honest, I've wholesaled a bunch of deals with tenants recently. I'm going to say insatiable appetite for deals. So if you have a deal cheap enough, there's people who'll take it with tenants. I had a deal in Bethpage, came with a real dud of a tenant. The guy, he was not a squatter. He was not a tenant. He was not the owner. He was something called a licensee. He was the boyfriend of one of the owners, so he was allowed to move in there. He just never left. And his girlfriend was like, she's in a facility. I think doesn't have mental capacity. And so the house was put in a trust, and her brother was like paying for the upkeep of this house for his sister's ex-boyfriend to live in there. So I thought, I got it at a good enough price that I figured I can get him out. And then I said, I'm just going to try and throw it out there to my buyers list with the tenant. And I was very clear, you're going to take this tenant. I made $45,000 on it. So that's not much more than I thought I was going to make if I had to close on it, fix it up, and sell it. So it's, if you want to look it up, it's 47 Plain Edge Drive in Bethpage. So I am right now throwing occupied. Oh, I did another occupied property recently on Baldwin, 207 $4 grand. Had 2 tenants in it. Right now, there's a few things happening. I wish I could understand them completely, but anybody who was buying at the auctions has had no new deals in a year. There haven't been auctions in Nassau since March. Suffolk started already, but there's so many people trying to get in and buy properties that you can wholesale something with a tenant in it. You probably won't do as well as you could if it was vacant. That's the truth.
Hey, Mike, I figured that, but then, would you even keep one for yourself, like that had the tenant? Would you wait for that eviction moratorium to go, and then fix and flip? Or
so again, when I go to contract, I just closed on something a month ago that has 2 shitty tenants in it in Massapequa. It's a great house. I've actually seen the inside. I got to see it a long time ago, and I really need to sell it to a retail buyer. So I got to wait for these 2 jerk-offs to get out. And I'm going to serve them, and I'm going to evict them, or I'm going to pay them to leave, one of them. But yeah, I'll do it if I have to, if there's profit in it, right? I bought it for probably $125,000 less than I can sell it for. So if I got to wait a little bit and eat some cost, I'll do it. But I'll get them out eventually, I hope, unless they freaking extend this eviction moratorium longer. But everything's a function of price, right? If I went to them and wanted to give them $100,000, they'd all leave, right? It's just a question of money. It's always a question of money. So if the eviction moratorium gets extended further, I'll make a business decision about possibly paying them more, offer them a big chunk of cash to get out. But yeah, I'll do it. I'll close if I have to. I will. Like that one, the price I paid was a little too high to get a cash buyer in there. So I was a little bit in limbo, but it was still too good of a deal to turn down. Ray Thomas, can you speak a little bit more how to do a subject to deal in New York? Ray, I hate to tell you the news. You can't do a subject to deal in New York. It's a sad situation, and I never want to say anything's impossible. But in New York, title company is simply a service provider. They don't run the closing. An attorney runs the closing. And the title company's job at every single New York closing is 2 things. 1, to make sure all the liens are paid off, and 2, to make sure that all the taxes are paid off. That's it. So the idea that you're going to find a title company that's going to allow you to keep a mortgage in place, I've never seen one, and I've dealt with hundreds of title companies. The second thing is you got a seller's attorney, an attorney representing the seller, and I cannot imagine any attorney in New York that will represent a seller that would allow a lien in his client's name to now be to remain in his name after he sold the property. So, is it possible to find a seller's attorney that doesn't care? Maybe. Is it possible to find a title company that doesn't need to pay it off? I highly doubt it. I think it's hard enough to find deals in New York where you can make money and are normal, but in the other 49 states, subject to works, and it's fine. The title companies don't care. There's no seller's attorney. But in New York, I think it's as close to impossible as can be. I'm sorry.
Okay, thanks. Is that the same for, well, this is part two of the question, where the seller will hold a note for you? What are your thoughts about that?
So I talked about seller financing. That's great. Let's talk about creative financing for a second, right? The just standard creative financing. I'm muting you, Ray, because you make a lot of noise. There's 4 tools in the creative financing tool bag that investors throughout the country have. The first is subject to buying a property and leaving the mortgage in place. We just spoke about that. The second is seller financing from the seller, where they're the bank. The third is seller financing from you, so you're going to be the bank. And the fourth is lease options. 1 and 3 don't work in New York. You never want to be the bank in New York, and you can't do subject to in New York. The other 2 can work. So if a seller wants to finance to you, that's something you should always bring up and you should always consider. Obviously, the payments you can get on the property have to be significantly more than the payments the seller is going to require. And lease options do work in New York. The problem is, and I've tried to do them, and I believe that no one's doing it, but some of the reasons why no one's doing it is because our taxes are so high here and the prices are so high that very often the number the seller needs, either on a seller financing situation or on a lease option, is just much more than you can get. So I had a deal where the seller was game to do a lease option. They were in the village of Hempstead, but they needed $4,000 a month to pay the taxes and the mortgage. And I could not find anybody who wanted to take the property and pay more than $4,000 a month. So it's hard to make the numbers work, but there are situations where it does work, where if the person doesn't owe a lot or the person owns it free and clear, but you have to, it's harder to make those things work in New York. It's not impossible, but it's harder to make all the numbers are harder to make work in New York. Adhere has 2 questions. When you use private money to fund a deal, are the mortgage recording fees any less than using a hard money lender? No, the recording fees are the same. However, if you've established a track record with a private lender, he may agree to not have the mortgage recorded and just have his attorney hold on to it in case they need it. There has to be a lot of trust because you could screw him over and theoretically you could go get another loan. But I have a lot of lenders who do not record mortgages with me anymore. They know I'm not screwing them over, and they just have their attorney hold it. And if everything goes to hell or I get hit by a bus or something, then they will then they'll record the mortgage at that point. So that's the only advantage. A hard money lender will always record the mortgage, obviously, but a private money lender may agree, after they trust you, or if it's somebody you know, to just hold the mortgage and not record it. Second question, can you self-direct your own IRA to buy a property? Abso-freaking-lutely you can, of course. Again, Specialized Trust is the place I would go to. There's other companies that do it too. You can, for sure. You can't use it to buy a property that you live in, but you can use it to buy an investment property 100%. The IRS looks at an investment property the same way they look at a stock or a bond. It's a security. It's something that changes in value, and it's an investment. That's the last question I got so far. So if anybody wants to unmute or type in the chat, I got nothing right now. Anybody? I'll give it a few minutes. Oh, Ray Thomas, put the slide up with the upcoming meetings. Sure. But again, if you're a member of the meetup group, you're going to see the upcoming meetings. So we have an in-person quick peek meeting. It's a half hour. It's in 2 weeks in 57 Wilton Road in Cold Spring Harbor. It's a burnt out mansion. And And then our next meeting, virtual meeting, will be in a month from now on May 13th. All right, I would have done it earlier in May, but I'm going to be away. I'm going to be in Dallas the first week of May. But again, if you're part of the meetup, you'll get this information right away. Anybody else? I'll give it a few minutes. Feel free to unmute and speak if you like.
Yep. I got a question, Michael.
Sure.
So what makes a cash offer, like why would a seller want a cash offer, let's say over, if they really wanted to seek top dollar, they probably could do so. So I just want to know, like, why are they going with us versus?
I will start
like a different
listing off many, many reasons. Okay. I mean, I'll give you the reasons that happen with me all the time. And by the way, you should know it's 10%, approximately 10%, any area you choose in the United States of America, 10% of the properties are going to sell off market, usually to an investor. Could it sell to the person's cousin, daughter? Yeah, but usually it's to an investor. So the main reasons people sell to me or any investor are it's either a problem with them or it's a problem with the property. So very often, if the property is in terrible condition, they cannot sell it to a retail buyer because the retail buyer can't get financing. Sometimes the property is just disgusting and they're embarrassed and they don't want to hear anybody say, "How does anybody live like this?" Sometimes they don't want to wait or don't want to show it. Right? They maybe inherited a property, they live far away, and they don't want to deal with a realtor. Sometimes they just had a bad experience with a realtor, right? They got screwed by a realtor. Sometimes they had a bad experience with a retail buyer. So maybe they tried to sell a property a while ago, and the retail buyer pulled out their get out of contract free card and said they couldn't get financing at the last minute, and they got pissed and they want your surety. The bottom line is investors like me provide a seller with convenience and certainty. And sellers understand that they're giving up some value for that, right? Which is exactly the same in any transaction, right? When you go to Starbucks and you buy a cup of coffee for $6, you are buying that for $6, even though it costs Starbucks 37 cents to make, because you don't want to buy a foaming milk machine and you don't want to buy the coffee, you don't want to buy a stirrer and a cup, and you're going to pay $6 for something that really costs 30 cents because of the convenience and the certainty of it. And that is what we as investors provide to sellers, certainty and convenience. And I am 100% upfront with them. And I've said to people on 1,000 occasions, you can get more money for this if you list it, right? And then that's how you find out what their truth is, right? We have to be able to solve a problem of theirs. That can be all kinds of problems. Like I said, it could be just that they're embarrassed at how the house looks. It can be just that they don't want to fix it up, or they don't want to clean it up, right? I bought tons of properties from people that are just like, I tried, the house is full of shit, and they started cleaning it up, and after 4 months, they haven't made a dent, and they said, forget it, I'll take less money because I don't want to come here every Sunday. I have a life, I have a wife and kids, and it's too much on me. It could be all kinds of problems. It could be something illegal, right? It could be an illegal unit. I bought a property in West Hempstead. I'll tell you a quick story. Seller calls me, says, this is the property. I go, it's listed for $699,000. She goes, yeah. I said, you don't need to sell it to me. I go, you just have it listed too high. Why don't you just list it for $599? You'll sell it in 5 minutes. She goes, I want you to come by and take a look. I go by, I take a look. House is in pretty good condition. Nice house. It's in what the hell? Cathedral Gardens, right? Cathedral Gardens is like the nicest part of Hempstead, but there's a little strip. Cathedral Gardens is Hempstead, and then right next to Garden City. So beautiful. And there's one little strip of Cathedral Gardens that's West Hempstead schools. So I said to her, listen, I can't pay you what it's worth. She says, what can you pay? I said, $450. She says, sold. Bought the property for $450. Literally owned it 2 days before I sold it for $575. Which is what I knew it would go for. It was a $575, $600 house. What was the story? The story was that it had 2 illegal bathrooms that looked like they were built a long time ago. And she had gone to contract with a buyer who came at the last minute and said, you don't have permits for these bathrooms. And she assumed any retail buyer was going to give her that trouble. The retail buyers came to me and said, what about these bathrooms? I'm like, lady, I don't know. There's no I go, my job is to convey clean title to you. There's no violations for the bathrooms. There's no open permits for the bathrooms. No one's going to ask questions about them. And then she was fine with that. So I solved the problem for that seller. She needed to close. She was moving somewhere in Westchester, And I was able to give her the amount of money she wanted when she wanted. It was convenience and certainty. She sold me the house, honest to God, for $150,000 less than she could have listed it for. So that's the kind of thing that we provide. We can provide convenience and certainty, and the sellers understand that they're going to get less money because of that. Any other questions?
Hey, Michael, it's Kyle.
Hi.
Quick question. Do you have an idea of what your response rate is on your direct to seller mail?
I don't track response rate. I only track return on investment. And as crazy as that sounds, I need to track it over the course of a year, because I do deals now where the person's got my 6th mailer, and that's how it works. So I don't really care what my response rate is. I mean, if you told me my response rate was 1/100th of 1%, I don't care. All I care about is how much money am I putting into the marketing campaign, and how much money am I getting out of it over time. So it doesn't affect me. Like some people track the mail piece and they track them. I can't get too far into the weeds on the marketing, because I think I'll blow my brains out, right? I do 4 marketing channels, and I track every single lead, appointment, offer, contract, and closing off each marketing channel. But I need a long time, and because I didn't market really for 5 months, I'm not even gonna know what the hell is going on with my KPIs till the end of this year. Then I'll have an idea. But I don't track response rate, and I don't care. So if you told me, people call me all the time and say I can get you a better response rate. I couldn't give 2 shits. What do I care how many responses I get? All I care about is how much money I make. So if I get a low response rate, but I get a $100,000 deal from it, to me that's that's good. I'll take that over
Marketing budget. Yeah. No. I'm starting up a 7-month drip, so I was just curious.
a drip campaign via mail, you say, or drip via?
7-month via mail postcards.
Okay, good. You should not mail once if you're not going to mail 6 or 7 times. That's good. You got to mail multiple times. Mail is a funny thing. Mail really is a funny thing, right? You think when I tried mail like many years ago, I sent out a mailing and I didn't get response, and I'm like, mail sucks. But if you're not mailing a person 6 or 7 times, you really have no idea if it's good, if it works or not. So it's good that you're mailing 7 times. So, but I don't track response rate. Any other questions? Feel free.
Yeah. So
Hi, Michael.
driving for dollars. Have you marketed to a list like that, and is it a good list?
So there was a period of time where I decided driving for dollars has to be great, and I got a Deal Machine app, and I got a bunch of people driving for me, and I got 600 properties, and there wasn't one deal in the 600. Now, maybe if I got 601, I would have got a deal. I don't know, but for some reason, what I found is that almost every vacant shithole property in our area fell into one of 4 categories. It was either A, bank owned, so the bank had already foreclosed on it. That's not a deal. It was B, sold to a different investor. That's not a deal. C, it was so ridiculously underwater that I would need to go, with a submarine to figure out if I can get a short sale on it. And I hate short sales. I do them, but I hate them. Or 4, it was a reverse mortgage. A very high percentage of more reverse mortgages where the borrower had died. Now, I'm one of the few people who actually knows how reverse mortgages work. I know reverse mortgages very well. And one of the biggest problems with reverse mortgages is you do not know what the balance is. Because we used to record when we closed a reverse mortgage, we used to close 150% of the maximum that the borrower was allowed. But that means if the borrower was allowed to get $500,000, we would record a mortgage for $750,000, even if there was no balance on it, which was unlikely. There usually was some balance. So you can look at a reverse mortgage property and you'll see a number recorded, and there could be a 0 balance on it, or there could be a balance that's much higher than that. Because if they maxed out and haven't made, the interest accrues, it keeps accruing on there, they might owe $2 million. And you can't find out what the balance is unless you're the borrower or the heir of the borrower. So, I went down that rabbit hole a few times where I got an heir and I asked them to call the servicer, and they couldn't even find the servicer because it had been transferred 100 times. So I'm not interested in any of those 4 categories because all of them to me are not worth the time. So having said that, I mail out a lot, right? I mean, a lot. I don't know if you can see, but I got tons of return mail. So if my return mail comes back vacant, I'll skip trace it and look for it. So like I recently went down this stupid rabbit hole. I got a whole pile on this property in Babylon where I was able to contact the ex-husband of the owner who is dead, has no parents, has no kids, and no siblings. So I just tracked down her cousin in Austin, Texas, who told me that the person wrote a deathbed will to her boyfriend. It gave me the boyfriend's number. So like I this one maybe there's a chance because I know it's owned free and clear. I know the person's dead. So that's where you can hit a home run, right? If a property's owned free and clear and the owner's dead and you find the heirs and you give them the good news of, hey, you know, I'll give you $10,000 if you let me deal with this shit. Sometimes that'll work, but it's not easy. So I don't recommend drive for dollars is fine, but you need to know how to do the research online to see if it falls into one of those 4 categories or not. That's really the important part. I'm just getting some water. So in Nassau County, it's pretty easy. Or if you have PropStream, it's easier to do that research. But you really need to know what's going on with the property before you spend a nickel trying to find the owner. Because like I said, everything that I looked at fell into one of those 4 categories. And that was 600 properties. Anything else?
Yeah, I got one more question.
Sure.
So basically, like in PropStream, most of the properties are listed with an agent. So do you think dealing with the agent is different than dealing with a property owner, which is in off market or something like that?
I would not spend 1 second looking at, talking to, or dealing with listed properties. We're in the hottest market that ever existed. So you've got to understand something. If a property is not selling, it's only not selling for one reason, and that's because the price is too high. I know you think, well, what if it's in a bad location? What if the house is shitty? There is a price for everything, right? I'll buy a house sight unseen next to the train tracks in any place if the price is right. I'll buy a house, I'll buy vacant land. So if something's listed and is not selling, let's analyze what's going on here. We have a seller who has an unrealistic expectation of what the property's worth. Now, the story I told you in West Hempstead, that property was listed. The first thing I said to the seller is, listen, if it's listed, it's very unlikely that I'm going to buy it. Now, she knew at that point that she was going to go much lower. So she told me to come, and I could hear that in her voice. But I tell that to sellers. I constantly get calls. I send them a postcard. I didn't know the property is listed. I send out 20,000 pieces of mail every month. So the guy will go, oh, yeah, you sent me a postcard. The house is listed. And I'm going to be like, listen, I'm an investor. I have to buy it at a discount. So unless there's something that I don't know, it's probably not going to work. And I talk to people all the time who spend their time on listed properties. Now, I've bought listed properties. That story I told you was a listed property. And I've bought listed properties here and there. But it is a huge waste of time. Huge. It's super unlikely you're going to buy a property that's listed at enough of a discount where you can make money. Unless you have some information. So there are exceptions, but very rare. So, for example, someone who has an uncooperative tenant and lists it, right? And no one's getting inside because the tenant's not letting anybody in. Then maybe. Right, or someone who's listed for a long time, but it's rare. I would never, ever, ever, ever suggest to somebody to spend any kind of time on listed properties. You want to spend your time going direct to seller. That's where you're going to buy, especially if you want to wholesale, right? If you want to fix and flip, then maybe you can find some investor special that's listed. But if you want to wholesale, think about it. You have to buy it cheap enough that there's a spread between what you'll pay and what a rehabber is going to pay. Chances are the rehabber is going to find the property that's listed as an investor special. So Don't spend your time on listed properties. You got to go off market.
Yeah. Thank you. That answers the question.
You're welcome.
Yep.
Anybody else? Is that it? I'll give you 2 minutes. If you want to type it into the chat or unmute, feel free. But if 2 minutes of silence goes by, we're going to call it. Again, you can ask anything. It doesn't have to be about what we discussed. I am an open book.
I have a question, Mike. So if you're if you have money lying around, what do you recommend? What do you recommend are the key things to look at to like analyze a deal before you put money to help with the financing?
Well, I think there's a few questions there. So just can you explain that a little better?
If you have money lying around and you hypothetically you have a deal, like, hey, I have a deal.
Saying are you asking if you have the money and you can self-fund, should you self-fund? Is that what you're asking?
No, just how do you analyze a deal if I have money to help finance your deal?
I'm not catching. If you have money to finance my deal, how do I analyze the deal?
How will I analyze the deal as the lender?
As a lender, you analyze it the same way you would if you were buying it. I mean,
gotcha. Okay.
The lenders are going to analyze it the same way. So most lenders analyze deals in the following way. They look at what the ARV is, sometimes based on an appraisal. A lot of them require an appraisal, and they'll take your scope of work. So you say, I'm going to redo the kitchen, I'm going to redo the bathrooms, and they're going to give that to an appraiser who's going to do a subject to appraisal. And they're going to say, this house is going to be worth $500,000 when it's done. Most of them don't want to lend more than 70% of the ARV to you. Then they're going to limit you to on a certain loan to cost. So let's say they're going to give you 90% of the purchase price or 80% of the purchase price plus 100% of what you say you're going to spend on the construction. So then they want you to put 10% up so then they have those two caps. So they're not going to give you more than 90% of the purchase price plus 100% of the construction, and they're not going to give you more than, let's say, 70, some go 65, 70% of the ARV. That's how they analyze it. That's all they care about. That's it. Those are the only numbers they care about, right? And that's the way I analyze deals when I wholesale and when I rehab, right? The only two numbers I care about are what's the ARV and what's the rehab estimate. Those are the only two numbers you need. Right. Now I say it easy. I say it sounds easy with the ARV. It's not always so easy, but that's a skill that I've developed pretty well over the last years. I can usually look at a house on the MLS and in 3 or 4 minutes tell you what it's worth. Very, very. I'm pretty good at that, and then if you tell me what it needs, I can in my head figure out what it's going to cost. I prefer to go see a house before I close on it, because I want to get a better handle on whether I can wholesale it, right? Which is happening a lot lately, and people take this for granted. I wish I would have known this earlier, but there are a lot of houses with original kitchens and original bathrooms that are selling at pretty high prices now, because the market just is screaming. And in good areas, certainly areas with top school districts, people will move in there with a crappy old kitchen and crappy bathrooms just to get their kids into a good school district. So I like to go in there and say, is this a possible wholesale deal where I can just take it, do nothing to it, or maybe clean it, or maybe just paint it, and then put it out? And sometimes I'm able to pay more for a deal if I can do that than I would if I do the standard 70% of ARV minus repairs figuring. But the analysis does not get affected by how it's being financed. Doesn't change.
ARV and rehab costs.
ARV and rehab costs all you need, or as is costs, right? Again, that's something that's overlooked.
Right.
Like, again, even if it's old, what did I just see? I just saw, where was it? In East Meadow. So East Meadow is a good area and doing hot like every other area. And so I had a deal that I put an offer in, and the guy said he listed it, and I knew when he said he listed it, I wasn't going to get it, and it was the best thing for him. At first, I didn't think he wanted to list it. He didn't think he could list it, but then he figured out he could, and that's fine. That's the best thing. But like capes that were, and this house was old. I'm talking about wood paneling, original everything. But he sold the cape there for like $470, and if everything was redone, I don't know if he would have got much more than like $550 or $570. So I like to look at a house for the possibility of wholetailing it. I'm a big fan of looking at it that way. But short of that, it's ARV minus repairs. But again, the financing doesn't affect it. Any other?
Michael,
yes.
Like, just a quick question. Like, do you like joint venture deals like in the 5 boroughs, like, or just in Nassau?
I will joint venture on deals. I get suckered into going to Queens every once in a while, but There's other issues. I won't buy an occupied property in Queens because it's, without the eviction moratorium, it takes 18 months to evict somebody there. So yeah, I can comp a property in Queens or in Brooklyn, and I can let you know whether it's worth it. I almost got into something in Brooklyn recently. So yes, I will JV properties in the 5 boroughs, even though I am weary of it.
Sure. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yep.
Okay. We have dead air. I'll give it 2 minutes. By the way, we're done in 8 minutes no matter what. So if anybody wants to punch out early, I can. But I'll answer any questions unless we get another 2 minutes of silence.
Hey, Mike, can you explain again? I think I asked this question before. Can you explain again? Because I know some states, they say like, oh, you can't be a realtor and be a real estate investor. Can you explain again, why is it okay here in New York?
So a couple things. It's only a couple of states, but in a couple of states, they sort of look at it as if you're a realtor and then you're going to buy the property at a discount as an investor, you are breaching your fiduciary responsibility because, and this is stupid, it makes no sense, because they figure, why wouldn't the person just list it? I gave a bunch of reasons before why people won't list it. So it's ridiculous. So they'll, I know there's some places frown it, but in New York, it's not the case at all. Tons of realtors are also real estate investors. And it's not a problem. Not only is it not a problem, I highly recommend anybody that's a real estate investor to get licensed, right? And there's 3 reasons why I believe everyone should be licensed. The first is to get access to the multiple listing service, which is by far the best way to comp out properties. The second is to list your own properties. So both retail, if you're fix and flipping, and even wholesale. It's perfectly legal to list a wholesale deal. You just cannot represent that you own the property. You have to list yourself as a contract vendee. It's no problem. It's the best way to find buyers also. And the third reason you want to get licensed is because if you go on enough appointments, you're going to meet people who just want to list, right? Or people who should list. So I have gone on appointments that I thought I was going to buy the property, and the guy's like, I want to list it, and I literally signed the listing agreement that day. Oh, I got to call that guy right now. 5 Hudson. I got a guy call me back. I'm just writing a note. And also, I've gone into properties, and they've told me, we're not in a rush. And I look at that, and they for some reason they think they need to sell to an investor. I'm like, there's no reason for you to sell this to an investor. I go, you're going to leave $100,000 on the table if you sell it to me or any other investor. I go, I'll get you a full price for it. Just let's list it. So that is another reason why I think everybody should be listed. But there's absolutely no conflict at all, right? When I'm buying a property, I'm not acting as an agent. The guy hasn't signed an agency agreement with me, and I'm not representing him. So it's not a problem in any way.
Right. And just again, because of my lack of ignorance, do you need to disclose anything like, hey, I'm a real estate agent, but I'm interested in buying, or don't even bother?
You don't have to, but I mean, I very often do. People ask me what I do. I say I do 2 things. I buy properties that need work, I fix them up, and I sell them. And I'm also a traditional realtor, but you don't need to. It's not like some situation where somebody's getting back to you and go, you didn't disclose that you were a realtor and you're in trouble. It's never going to happen in New York. Never.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
My pleasure. Okay. We have 5 minutes on the outside, but if we get 2 minutes of silence, I'm going to punch out. Again, if you don't want to speak, you can just type in the chat, or if you want to unmute, you can just ask me, whatever works for you. But if not, I'm going to give it another minute, and then we'll call it. And I will, I'm going to post, I can do that now, actually. I can post in Meetup the next meetings. So that'll be earlier. But if you have any questions, speak now or wait till next month. All right, I think we're done for the day then. Thanks, everybody, and thank you for joining. And everybody can, I'll put my phone number in if you want to call me. I'm happy to answer any questions. Or my email address. If you want to reach out to me privately, feel free. Good night, everyone, and thanks for coming. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mike.
Gotta stop this, right? Trying to stop this, and it's not working. Was I not recording? Is it recording? It is recording.